everyone, how's it going? My name is Harmony Nice and today I'm going to be doing another paranormal case. So last week I did a paranormal case on my channel about the haunting in Connecticut family and it was so good and I enjoyed it so much and you guys seem to enjoy it quite a lot too, so I thought I would do another one today. And I hadn't really heard about this case until recently and I've literally fallen into a hole of researching it, of like watching all the podcasts, reading all the articles about it and just going a little bit crazy with it, and I love it so much. I think it's so interesting. So this is the paranormal case of the Hinsdale house. This particular case isn't like a typical family goes into a house and gets haunted and there's only kind of one case about it. This is like multiple collections from multiple owners reporting paranormal activity going on the house, and there's tons of folklore and tons of history to this house. So I'm just gonna go through it from start to finish. And it's really the only house that I've ever researched into that firstly hasn't got a movie about it, but secondly got so many different documents of paranormal experiences happening to people in this house, all from completely different people. And everything that I'm about to tell you is completely true. So basically it's either been reported or it's been researched into finding out that it is true, or some of it is from like psychics and things like that, but I'm just going to be telling you it all, which makes this case even crazier because I've never heard about a house with so much to it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoy this video and let's just jump right into it. So the Hinsdale house is an old farmhouse at 3830 McMahon Road in Hinsdale, New York in the United States of America. And this is a big old white farmhouse which is supposedly built in 1853 around, they've determined. And this house is completely isolated. It's literally like a house in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees, mountains, also a forest with a road near it. There's a couple of other houses kind of near it, but it is just isolated by itself. So this is the house. The original property had a way station, a barn, and also a field there that is now gone, but the actual original part of the house and the structure of the house is still there, but there's just been some bits added to the bedroom and the living room of the house. Firstly, right off the bat, the land that this house has been built on has an extremely dark history to it to begin with. There's folklore around the surrounding area that this whole entire area is haunted or cursed. And so much of this house and what happened to it and when it was built and what it was built on is so flawed. So according to lots of records, this is one of the resting places of a burial ground of the Sonic tribe. It is believed that the land has been cursed by the Native Americans because obviously they had their land taken from them and they were killed. So what is believed is that when they realised that they were having their land taken from them, is that they put a curse on the land, basically in order to not let any spirits that resided there move on. So whatever was done to the land in the future and whatever was built on the land in the future, because it was taken from this particular tribe, it would have a curse on it and it would permanently be haunted and disturbed by wandering spirits that were not allowed to pass over. But the dark history of the house and the land does not stop there. So the first believed owners of the house were two brothers called the Averiks brothers. I believe that's how it's pronounced. I couldn't actually find their names online. That's only what I've heard in podcasts and they haven't always been that good quality, but that is what I've got from that, the Averiks or the Averiks brothers. Who apparently the pair of brothers would kill people using the stagecoach's trail near the house. And what they did is rob them, then kill them, and then place their bodies in the crawl space underneath the house in the basement in the wintertime. And they were the first believed owners of the house. So the original property had around 100 acres of land around it, and in this 100 acres of land at the start of McMahon Road is a hanging tree. And if you guys aren't aware of what a hanging tree is, basically what it is like back in the day when they used to hang people for crimes, they used to hang them from trees basically. And this was one of the trees where people were hung from. And this is at the entrance of McMahon Road, by the way. So this is like placed in the house's original acres. And there is a particular story about a lady that was hung from this tree. So there was a woman called Elizabeth and she had just got married to her husband and fell pregnant. So her husband left off for war, and basically he could not afford to buy rings or any certification of their marriage. So when the lady began to show signs of her pregnancy, everybody started to think that she committed adultery, and she was taken and she was hung as a pregnant woman. And when her husband came back to look for her after he had returned from war, she was nowhere to be found, and it is believed that her body was buried near this tree, which is absolutely heartbreaking, and like you couldn't even imagine things like that happening now, but yeah. So the tree was actually hit by lightning in 2003 and actually destroyed and fell over into a ditch. But there is still some pieces of this tree laying around. Some people come and collect it to try and kind of be a part of the history of it, but apparently it's really, really bad luck to do so. Yeah, so after this, it was determined that the McMahon O'Brien family purchased the house and owned it for over 70 years. Again, this doesn't really fit up in the timeline, but around this sort of time, in 1943, it was reported that a little boy of the house called Emerson was out the back playing with his father's buzzsaw, where the belt broke on the buzzsaw and cracked him in the head and killed him on the property. And just to make matters absolutely even worse for this house, so a couple of years later in the 60s, a pair of brothers, a younger and an older brothers, were fighting in the woods behind the house. The fight was over religious reasons, where the older brother was converting to Catholicism, changing from being a Catholic to being a Jehovah's, and the younger brother really didn't like that, so they were having a massive argument about it, and the younger brother accidentally shot the older brother and killed him, even though the younger brother had literally just got out of jail the past summer. So if all of these folklore and stories are true, which some of them definitely are, there's been tons and tons of reports on these stories and they have been proven, there could potentially be hundreds and hundreds of bodies on this property, especially if you take into consideration the hanging tree, the burial ground, everything like that, and obviously people have died on the property without us even knowing. There could be tons. So in the late 60s to the early 70s, the Reese family purchased the property and the land surrounding the property, and they were going to build cabins on the property and make it into a bit of more of a community. And the Reese family did proceed on doing this. They started to build cabins and also place ponds in the property, and that is believed what started the paranormal disturbances, because they disturbed the land. It's not really determined when this actually happened, who actually invited them to the house, but actually Ed and Lorraine Warren came to this house, were called to this house because of reports of paranormal disturbances, and Ed and Lorraine reported that there was definitely something wrong with this house and it needed investigating. But soon after, the Dandy family moved into the Hinsdale house, I believe renting it off the Reese family, and nothing else was ever done about that by Ed and Lorraine. And that shows to me something extremely interesting, just because Ed and Lorraine didn't just go anywhere. They only went to places where they were extremely convinced that something was happening there, and how we'd never really heard about that as well. That's like one of their least known cases, is insane. So the Dandy family moved into the Hinsdale house in the early 70s, and the family consisted of the mother Claire Dandy, the father Phil Dandy, and their children Laura, Beth, Mike and Mary. And the family moved into the house thinking that it was the absolute ideal house for them. It was in the countryside, there was tons of space for the children to play on, it was quiet, it was peaceful, it was a big enough house. But soon after the family moved into the house is when they realised that something just wasn't right. At first, the family started to receive mysterious phone calls to the house that were not of friends and family, but instead of like whispering and crackling or just complete silence. The family would occasionally hear chanting and drumming coming from the woods, and also nearby neighbours and people that live there now also reporting hearing this sound. They also heard whispers coming from outside of the house, and the family started to receive mysterious burns all over their body with no explanation to how they got them in the first place. The Dandy family also started to see full body apparitions of a woman in white outside of the house and in the back of the house. Bizarre animal slash human hybrids of an animal slash cow sort of thing. Could have been believed to be a demonic non-human entity. Also on one occasion in the living room there was some exposed brick, and two bricks dismantled themselves from this wall and placed themselves underneath the crawl space in the house, like they just removed themselves from the wall. One night, Phil Dandy was sitting downstairs by himself while the rest of the family had retired to bed that night. Phil Dandy looked out the window and he saw a large group of strange faces staring at him through the window, and Phil Dandy jumped up thinking that it was trespassers, so went outside to chase them away. And when he got outside, nobody was there, and he looked back through the window into the house, and from inside of the house was a group of strange faces staring back at him from inside the house. That gives me so much chills, and I don't know why, like it literally freaks me out so much, that part. It's super freaky. The family began to grow more and more concerned where whatever was residing in this house became violent. There was a point where a lamp was even chucked at one of the daughters of the Dandy family across the living room, and one of the daughters in particular, it is believed to be Laura, unfortunately had tons and tons of problems with one of the spirits residing on this land, and she apparently even became possessed for a short period of time. Last straw came to Mr. Dandy when he began to experience a state of amnesia where he couldn't even remember the frightening incidents that was happening to him. At this point, an exorcist called Father Alphonsus was called by the family to come to the house. He was a priest at St. Bonaventure University, and he was called to exorcise the home and the family while some paranormal investigators and the family were both present. And during this exorcism, apparently the lights were flickering on and off. There was banging coming from what sounded like inside of the walls. Sarah said when the exorcism began, it was literally like the house was screaming, and even a window broke from the inside out, basically. After finishing the exorcism, it worked for a few days, but after that, the spirits returned and the paranormal experiences kept happening. Father Alphonsus was called in again to exorcise the house, and he did so, but that made no difference, so it forced the Dandy family to move out in 1974. And Claire later on wrote a book about her experiences in the house. What makes this story so much worse about the Dandy family is that after the family moved out, it absolutely pains me to say that the oldest daughter committed suicide after leaving the house. It's not determined why, and it was rumours that it was because of something that happened to the house and that she never really truly moved on from what was happening in the house, but it's obviously not determined. That is just a rumour. But there is actually believed to be paranormal experiences and sightings in the Hinsdale house to this day. Multiple times people have spotted a young girl in 70s clothing wandering the house, and a few of them had reported it to the current owner Dan, who spoke to Claire Dandy about this and asked if she knew anything about this because they were the main family that lived there in the 70s. And Claire said yes, and they think that she came and returned back to the house for some reason. So the Reese family still owned the house after the Dandy family left, and they began to rent it out. They rented it out to so many people, but no family stayed for more than 6 months at a time. Families would come and go and come and go, and one family in particular moved into the house, moved all their stuff into the house, stayed there for less than 2 weeks, and completely abandoned the house and refused to come back and collect any of their stuff and actually even have any of their stuff again. They just basically told them to sell it all off. That was how bad it was. So now for my favourite part of the story. In the late 80s, there was an elderly couple called Flo and Joe Misnick that moved into the Hinsdale house. The pair absolutely fell in love with the look of the house and the area and decided to purchase the home in order to renovate it and kind of make it their last house. The pair were aware of the house's dark history because it had been heavily publicised when the Dandy family lived there, but they really didn't want it to let it get in the way of their way of living for the last few years. The pair stayed there for the longest time in a very, very, very long time, and apparently made a deal with whatever was resting there. Joe said that when they went into the house, they made a statement and said that if you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. And apparently from the start, Flo laid down the ground rules, and one day she just walked into the kitchen and said out loud, "You can stay here if you want to, but we're not leaving." Flo maintained that she saw at least one ghost in the house standing at the end of her bed, and it was a man in a plaid shirt and blue jeans with a rifle staring at her from the end of her bed. And when Flo asked what he was doing there, he said back to her that he didn't know and then disappeared. On numerous occasions occasions, the Misnicks reported a phantom car, and they heard on multiple occurrences that they heard a car pull up outside their house and like a rev of a car engine, and then when they went outside nothing was there. Some people even related this to possibly the buzzsaw that was used. It could have sounded like a motor from that, but I'm really not sure. Sometimes the smell of cigar smoke came wafting through the house as well, but the pair never stated that they felt anything dangerous or scary happen, but they definitely said that the place was haunted. The pair lived there for actually quite a few years, but it came a few years past the 80s, but the actual pair died unfortunately within a couple of months of each other outside of the house. There was also pictures taken from the 80s, believed around the time that Flo and Joe lived there, of blue orbs floating around the house. It's not determined whether they took it, but there is pictures from the 80s that have these strange blue orbs floating around the house. It's not really clear what happened to the house after the Misnicks passed. I think a couple of other people rented it, but for a while the house became derelict. But at some point it was purchased by a man called Bill Connolly, or Bill Connolly, I believe it's pronounced. And he originally bought it for kind of scientific research and paranormal research. But the management that Bill put it under was really not very good. He had a team of people working there, but the actual connection between Bill and the team was really, really bad because Bill lived in Canada. So they were trying to ask him if they could do stuff to the house and do stuff in the house, but Bill was extremely distant towards the house and really, really off-put by the house, so he never really connected with it. And it kind of seemed like he was ignoring the house for a while. And actually it was planning to get demolished. I'm not sure whether this was by Bill or not, I think it was. And changed the house into something else because he did not want anything to do with the house, it seemed like. But instead he changed his mind in 2015, where the current owner, Dan Clays, or Cleese, inquired about purchasing the house and then actually purchased the house in July 2015. And again for paranormal and scientific research, and he decided to renovate the house too. After he had purchased the house, it's determined that Dan's girlfriend Michelle I think it's his girlfriend or someone very close to him, he spoke about it a lot in a podcast, actually spoke to the previous owner Bill and asked him kind of why he abandoned the house and didn't really do anything to it. And Bill replied, "This place is evil, I want nothing to do with it." The current owner purchased the house and began to renovate it, but he does not live there on a regular basis. He visits there a lot, but he lives, I think, in a different state or like a couple of miles away or something like that. He visits the house regularly, but he stated that whenever he is there, he can never get more than an hour's sleep. He stripped the house bare and redid it all for the scientific research of paranormal investigators and people that wanted to research the paranormal, from mainly professionals, I believe. And I believe he held or believes he holds events where paranormal investigators come to the house. I'm not quite 100% sure whether this is true or not. I'd seen it in a few places. And Dan now has a well-known Facebook page where he reports lots of ongoing things going on in the Hinsdale house and documents things that had happened, including pictures, videos, more information that had come about the Hinsdale house, and so on and so forth. And it's super interesting, so creepy. So if you become invested in this case like I have, definitely go follow it. I'll link it down below. So when Dan at first purchased the house, he ripped up the floor, and in the crawl space underneath the house he found old radios and also the bricks that had been dismantled from the house when the Dandy family lived there. There was also a room where something ridiculous like 50,000 to 500,000 bees resided in this room, like in a massive bee's nest, and he had to get a beekeeper to come and remove the bees for him. And something strange about this area that I found really interesting, because I love bees, is that for some reason the honeybee population in this area is 10 times higher than anywhere else in the area around it. For some reason, it's the honeybees are just drawn to this area, and everybody that lived there had reportedly said that they had massive problems with bees the whole time that they were living there, which I think is super odd and really interesting. I don't know why that would be. If any of you guys could let me know down below, that would be great. In the first few months of owning the house, Dan actually experienced quite a lot of break-ins into the Hinsdale house. And when he had discovered that the house had been broken in, he found symbolistic patterns drawn on the floors and pentagrams drawn on the walls and the floors. So he had to block it up and put bars on the windows and the doors and things like that. The current owner of the house, Dan, claims to have had hundreds and hundreds of paranormal experiences in the house, as well as tons and tons of paranormal investigators all claiming the same thing. Some paranormal investigators have have been into the house and received random scratches all over their bodies. There had been pictures taken in the house looking like strange blue energy orbs everywhere, almost identical to the one that was found in the 80s, which I think is so interesting. Some of the paranormal investigators and Dan himself have claimed to see a woman in white in the back of the house and in the surrounding area, and through EVR sessions and through psychics believe that this is Elizabeth, who was hung at the tree. I found one picture, I believe that is her. It's like a white sort of spirit. I'm not 100% if it was. There was no caption to it on Facebook, so yeah. A lot of people relate this apparition to the woman that was hung and says that she is still wandering looking for her husband. Lots of people have also claimed to see a Sonic tribe leader, like the kind of face and head of it, and in like a bluish colour, which I think is super interesting because blue is an extremely kind of like calm, wise colour, and kind of what the blue colours represent. Tons and tons of people have visited the house and some swear to never return again. Dana has always tried to keep it extremely positive while letting people into the house and being in the house himself, because he knows that is the best way to kind of keep the darker spirits away. There was actually a case of Dan's friend Nick coming into the house to do some paranormal investigating, and I think he did an EVR session or something like that to try to connect with something, and when he left the house something followed him home, and he said that these spirits completely messed with his head. He felt like something was trying to mess with his head so badly and he just had to take a break from it, and said he does not plan on returning anytime soon. I'm not sure if that still sticks, but like 2 years ago he said that he was never planning to return. The strange thing about this is later on in a few EVR sessions, a couple of paranormal investigators were doing some EVR sessions in the house, and basically what they heard is a man or like something with a man's voice growling and making sneering noises and saying horrible things, trying to scare them off. And then during this, the voice stopped and said, "Where's Nick?" And multiple people kept coming up to Dan and saying like, "I've just had this on this EVR session of this angry male spirit or entity or something asking for Nick, like, where's Nick? Like, who is Nick?" And Dan could not believe it, because obviously the man that came into the house before that, they believed the spirits were messing with his head, was called Nick. There was also one other case that this actually happened to, of a spirit following a man home. Same sort of thing happened where he started to see apparitions and scary things after he left the house and felt like the spirits were messing with his head. And he believed that something followed him home, so the man Nick and the other man had to do full body and house cleansing, and I don't think either of them are planning to return to the house. After this, it was determined that Dan said he felt like there was something a lot darker in the house, but it came and went when it pleased and wasn't always there. Other entities and spirits have been spotted in the house too, including the man in the plaid shirt with blue jeans and the rifle. Tons of people have claimed to see him. Some people have said that he was standing at the end of the bed as well. The current owner, Dan, also claims that the previous owner, Flo Misnick, still resides in the house, and he's had lots of conversations with her and so have other people in the house. He even had an experience where he was either asking a question or speaking to Flo, and he actually felt Flo take his hand and lead him to the room that he needed to be in or wanted to be in for the question. I think it is so interesting. He believed that because she loved the house so much and it was like her last home and she had such a lovely time there, that she wanted to return after she was deceased. Multiple psychics have also visited the house and claimed that there was a young boy that lived there that killed himself in the closet of the house. And tons of people have actually claimed, even before the psychic visited the house, that they felt spikes in their bodies when they went into the closet, and when they were doing EVR sessions in the closet, they kept receiving this kind of disembodied voice, and it still happens even to this present day. Present owner Dan has actually done lots of live video recordings of this house on his Facebook page, and dark shadows appear in the videos, and it's so creepy. It's definitely worth a watch. The owner Dan is basically a professional paranormal researcher, and he is still trying to work out the timeline of what actually happened in this house. And the current owner claims to protect himself every single time he goes into the house. He blesses himself before he goes out into the house, and he carries a little guardian angel figurine with him. And he never lets his defenses down in the house, and he always stresses to people while being in the house to never let their defenses down. And he says that is his kind of secret to being safe within the house. Dan himself helps spirits move on, and he has tried multiple times to help the spirits of this area move on, but he believes that the curse is true and that he thinks there's something stopping these spirits from passing over in this land or in this house in this area. Until then, the house is in a very, very good hands of Dan, where he continues to connect to the dead and try to work out what happened there very, very respectfully. He's very incredible at what he does with this house, and I honestly admire him so much for the work that he's putting into this house, because I think so many of these houses are just kind of abandoned and destroyed because nobody wants to live in them. But when you actually get somebody that's willing to put the effort into it, to research it and find out these people's stories, I think it's incredible. So even until this day, Dan claims that people are drawn back to this house as well as never wanting to come back, no matter how scary it is. He says sometimes it even becomes like a bit of an obsession, which I completely get, because since I've been researching this case, I have become so overly obsessed with this house. The owner claims it's even dangerous to drive near the house. There's been multiple cases where people have been driving up McMahon Road and their cars have died, or they have crashed or something like that, and there's been so many of them, which inevitably draws the people that have crashed or the cars have died to the house, which I think is crazy. This case is wild. Like, I actually can't believe I've never heard about this case before. Like, there's been so many films made about so many houses, and this one to me is by far the most interesting one that I've ever heard of. So I don't know why it hasn't really been spoken about more, but it's so interesting. I would definitely recommend watching this podcast or this video with like an interview with the owner, Dan. It's so interesting. I will link it down below. I would also recommend following Dan's The Hinsdale Houses Facebook page. I think it's so interesting and I love to kind of look at all the updates and all the pictures on there. I would definitely recommend doing that. And I've become personally invested into this house. So Dan, if you ever need to sell the house, I'm your girl. But yes, thank you guys so much for watching. I really, really hope you enjoy this haunted paranormal case video. I actually believe this one like 100%. Even with the haunting Connecticut house, like I wanted to believe it, but it was like 99% sure that it was real. But this one I'm like almost 100% convinced that it is true. So let me know what you think of this case down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you soon with another video. Bye guys, hope you're enjoying these paranormal videos because I'm gonna keep doing it. Woo.